So first we looked at how the aviation industry was doing before the pandemic. So like post 9/11 and due to the financial crisis, like a lot of demand had dropped for the aviation industry. Like people didn't want to fly as much, but in the past decade, there has been a significant growth. Like things have been coming back to normal, and then airlines have started expanding. And a quote in the article said they have their ranks have increased by 20%. And then companies like Delta and United were looking to expand. I think Delta was trying to buy a flight school so that they have an incoming stream of pilots going on. And then due to technology, we had lower operating and maintenance costs for the aircraft. And then we also had more fuel efficient aircraft.
So everything was looking good.
Yeah, everything was looking good. And because
people were more people traveling than ever before?
2019, yes. I think at one point in 2019 there was like the historical like peak. I think I don't know the number exactly, but it was doing really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, like companies were ordering more aircrafts and everything because they knew that demand would keep growing, and then they expected the capacity to grow also.
Next thing we looked at was the effect of the pandemic on the industry in general. Obviously, because of COVID-19, there's travel restrictions and demand has significantly decreased among travelers. So airlines aren't getting the necessary people going through and making, obviously, the money they need to make. This led to a lot of planes being grounded and kind of pushed aside, and a lot of flights are canceled, or they're still being flown or not flown. They're still traveling, but with very few passengers. Obviously, this reduced revenues. Many airlines, they wanted to lay off employees originally, but because of the stimulus package, they can't.
So what are these employees? They're just getting paid because of the stimulus package?
I don't.
Yeah, like
they still have to work, I believe, but
if they're not flying planes, what are they doing?
Training, getting ready. I really don't know what they could be doing right now, to be honest. I know originally the airlines wanted to use the stimulus money they received to make cuts and improvements to work around COVID-19, but the government forced them to keep their employees until October 1st.
Okay.
Even though the airlines warned them, like, after October 1st, there's a good chance that we're laying off a good portion of our employees. But
so essentially, we just propped up, we gave money to airlines to hold jobs for a couple more months on the hope things will get better.
That's how I perceived it, yes.
Why wouldn't we just give the money? Why wouldn't we just let them lay people off, and so they don't have to deal with all the expense, and just increase the amount of unemployment insurance? And then avoid the companies taking a share of it.
I feel like we have to look at the social welfare aspect as well. Like if people got laid off in March, especially when the pandemic was at its peak, when people were dying the most and healthcare had become a really big issue. I feel like if they laid off everybody, it would just become chaotic.
So we're just going to do it now a little bit over time.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that seem logical? Are we ignoring a problem by throwing money at it?
You're absolutely ignoring a problem.
I guess I was just pushing back making the decision, but I guess it gave them some more time to, just sort of worry about it later because they had more things to worry about at the moment.
Okay. What do you think they were worrying about?
I mean, they had to keep the company afloat also, right? If they were just cutting costs. Okay. I mean, I guess that makes more sense. If they cut costs, they could last longer. But don't you think employee morale would significantly decrease if their friends and coworkers are just being laid off left and right?
Good point on morale. Sure.
Yeah, because if bad political optics too for the United States administration just to have higher unemployment stats too.
Yeah, especially with the elections coming up, I feel that's a very important point.
Well, that comes back Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but Trump has been quoting again and again that his unemployment numbers have been the best ever, right? That's his like go-to gimmick, saying he's the best at doing this, right? And if suddenly all the numbers change, he would have to go back on his statement, and I don't think he wanted to do that.
Okay. So shouldn't we, just to keep that same topic going, well, I'll let you go. I'll ask that question later, because the question that's in my mind, and Jack, I don't remember if we talked about this yesterday or not. Jack's in 2 classes, so should we have just let the airlines, let the capital markets take care of them, and let the strong survive and let the losers lose?
Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit yesterday.
Okay. So I'll wait. Let's think about that, but maybe as you move ahead, we'll get to that.
Okay, the last thing I'll state here is between January 20th and March 7th, stock prices of U.S. airlines decreased by 30%.
So because things were not doing well, the government decided to intervene. Like we just talked about, the airlines got a $25 billion economic stimulus package to help them through the pandemic. But the reason the government said they were giving this was so that they could figure out ways to keep the company afloat over time due to the pandemic. But the other thing they asked for in return of this money was that they would not lay off or furlough any workers till October 1st, essentially. This gave the companies money. The money gave airlines time to stabilize, train their workers, and keep them ready for in case demand peaks up again, and also to raise time to raise money from capital markets. Because I feel like if they had not gotten a stimulus package and used, like you said, if we had let the capital markets take care of it, I feel like the money would not have come in time, and maybe the company would have gone bankrupt or something.
So what?
I guess that's a good point.
No, jump right in. This is like, why should we let companies that are not efficient in managing their own resources and being prepared for an emergency stay in business?
But that would mean a lot of employees are losing, even more employees are losing jobs than just the ones not being. Everybody's losing a job, right? And it's not just jobs. Like these days, they get employee insurances and everything. I feel like in times of the pandemic, it was just the right move to kind of not change things.
Okay,
Stability was important.
Okay. What about the fact that this just works with airlines? What about the mom and pop stores that had to close and they didn't get any of this money?
That's an interesting point. Like the critics of this stimulus package said that the government should have done this for everybody, which I believe would have been the right thing to do. But then I don't know why they didn't, and I don't really have an answer as to why only airlines got it. But yeah, I don't have an answer to the question.
Chris, what do you think?
If I could opt in, I think the big reason is that Boeing is a really huge part of the United States GDP. I remember I read an article on Wall Street Journal. It was like 1-2% of the United States GDP. And that's in a very significant U.S. defense contractor.
Right.
So not only do they provide the U.S. military planes and other military equipment, but also they have to get revenue from the airlines. So if they're not getting the money from just the military, but also their other source of revenues is also gone, then Boeing is going to be absolutely bankrupt, and that means we have to let loose our military secrets. Other countries might take over with their hegemony. We have to preserve U.S. hegemony. I think it's a more U.S. national defense question more than a business question. So I think that's a big reason.
I would agree, and I think our defense business did a really good job at keeping COVID-19 out of the country. Don't you think? Okay, I'm pushing.
Yeah.
But again, what's the purpose of any military is to protect the people. But if this virus could cause so much havoc, shouldn't we spend money on, instead of building massive bombers and stuff like that, how do we protect ourselves against the virus? Seems to me, we saw the impact of the virus. And to think this is something that, it could easily have been an attack but it's just we didn't have the tools to do it. Just I'm off track.
But like even I guess it's not just the virus itself, right? With the protests going on right now and everything,
Absolutely.
I feel like there's just a larger discussion which is going to come about how military and the police should get less funding and healthcare and education should get more funding. I don't know where the discussion is going to go, but I feel like it's the starting point.
I fully agree. We got to start somewhere. And if you look at our perceived enemies, if you look at what China spends on education versus what they spend on defense, it's opposite of ours. So what we spend on defense, they spend on education. And what they spend on defense, we spend on education. So, I mean, knowledge is everything. Just my thought. Keep going. Good discussion. Jump in whenever you guys want. There's no the thing that we're talking about is there is really no clear answer. This is exploring and learning. Go ahead.
All right, next, what are airlines doing now? First, United Airlines and American Airlines are planning to reduce their administrative and management employee numbers by 30%. Southwest CEO said they're overstaffed. It might be overstaffed for a few years. Airlines are flying less than 60% of their scheduled domestic flights from 2019 and less than 30% of their schedules flights from 2019. So,
are you ready to jump on an airplane and fly somewhere, Jack?
As time goes by, the idea looks good.
But not right now.
Not at the moment. No.
Right, but how are you thinking about coming back in a few 8 weeks?
That's an interesting question. Like, I think I told you this already, but in March when I was flying out, right, I had a flight from Rochester to Chicago, and there were less than 10 passengers, including me.
Okay.
So that was kind of, at first it seemed fun that like, okay, I get the whole plane to myself, right, the whole row at least. But then I realized the seriousness of the issue. And now when I think about having to fly back, I mean, they haven't even resumed international flights right now. I think that's going to happen in July. But when it happens, I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, I read that every airline has done what they could do to prevent the spread of the virus in case people resume flying. Like, apparently a lot of flights are like blocking the middle row, and then they're doing only plastic prepackaged food and no glass items in the airplane. And then after every segment, the plane is being sanitized and stuff like that. So I guess the issue comes down to whether there's a need. I mean, what I mean is, if there's no online classes, then I guess I have to come back. So there's not really much of a question, right? If the normal semester resumes, then I have to come back. So. Mm-hmm. And I'm also an RA, so I guess I don't want to give up my free room. So I guess I'll just get on a flight and come back. Whether I die or not, that's another question. I'll answer it. If I get back, then you'll know I'm safe. If I don't, then you know I'm dead.
Well, okay, that's good. Chris, would you hop on a plane?
Given, like, sanitary precautions, maybe. I don't know. It's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. If I were working for something like McKinsey, like, okay, fine. But, I mean, then I don't know if I would be working for a company like them, putting me on a plane during a pandemic. They're such a ruthless company like that. But I wouldn't think so. I would hope not.
Good point. So then if we're looking at the future of airlines, if that's where your thoughts are, and you happen to use a business there, Chris, McKenzie, what have they been doing for the past 3 months?
Oh, that's a good question. I always hear about consultants. I think they've been protesting these, the big three consulting firms about putting them on travel when the pandemic was just starting.
Mhm.
But I think they put a stop to it, and now everyone's working home. But I don't even know what they're going to do after the pandemic is lifted. Because are they still going to travel? I really don't know. That I don't think anyone knows, to be honest.
Right. But I think a lot of times we're going to think about it. If we can do a lot of this like this, do we always need to travel as much? So I would tell you in the days that I would fly into the city for a meeting, do I need to go for one meeting? No. So but again, what you guys just demonstrated is people aren't going to, do you think people are going to flock back to flying? I mean, do you think we are? Or is this going to be one of these slow, let's see what happens things?
Slow.
I feel like, okay, I read this interesting article the other day. It said over the past couple of months, business flying hadn't decreased at all. While like leisure, like travel, like a more vacational flying had decreased almost completely. But now, like Chris was saying, I think people are protesting that they don't want to fly because it's risky, right? So I think the business flying would come back right away because it's jobs, right? It's money, and like there's a lot more at stake. But with personal flying, I feel like it'll go more slow because obviously people don't want to risk anything. But then again, it's interesting though. Over spring break, I remember a lot of kids, like I knew, they were flying out, like to Cancun or Florida or Hawaii or whatnot, because the tickets were cheaper. So I feel like there could be opportunists who would use the opportunity to go abroad for cheaper, but the more like moderate and conservative people would be like, let's not risk it, and they'll take longer to get back on the bandwagon. I guess, yeah. Like people like me, we don't have a choice. Like if I gotta come back to school, I gotta get on a flight. But then if people have a choice, I feel like they'll be more reluctant.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
So essentially, our topic was the bailout necessary, right? I believe that it was because it gave employees income security and continued health insurance during times of severe uncertainty. And it allowed, like, because with the reduced demand, the companies didn't have any revenue, but this bailout helped the airline companies to stay afloat over time and gave them extra time to make plans for the future. Like companies now are making decisions as to how many people they'll lay off in October, but this time gave them like make that plan. I feel like if they had to lay off people in March itself, it would have been a lot more confusing for everybody. Essentially, things would have been chaotic. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I don't have to jump yet. Yeah, I'll jump in when I feel like I need to jump in. Okay, let's now take a look at this from let's narrow in a little bit on if you can stop sharing. I'm going to share something, and it's just sort of to tie it all back. Give me just but a second here. I brought up the 10K of Southwest. Okay, I think they're one of the strongest airlines going. And when we look at their balance sheet, okay, we can see they got cash, $2 billion of cash, short-term investments, current assets about $5,974. Most of these are fairly liquid if you think about it. I mean, cash, short-term investments, receivables. The rest is so small, so they have a fair amount of cash. We go over to their liabilities, and we see they have a negative working capital, okay, 5.9. And when we look at it, it's really the accounts payable, accrued liabilities being salaries primarily and taxes. And then we look at this air traffic liability, which is the tickets that everybody's bought in advance. And we now look at it from a liquidity perspective. Okay, you got to pay your people, right? You got to pay the pay. I mean, you can let them go a little bit, but these aren't something you can let go. And everybody wants refunds here. So you clearly don't have enough assets or current liquidity to keep these things going. Big one being the current air traffic light. People want their money back if they're not going to fly next week or a month. You got to give them the money back. So you think about that. They need to generate cash to be able to keep this moving. Go to the cash flow statement. They generated $4 billion in cash. Now, giving an ongoing basis, this cash would keep them liquid. But net income, how much do you say it was down domestically? 60%?
Yeah, close to. 60%.
Okay, so just take 60% down. So that means only 40% of this is left. So even if they're flying at 40% of capacity, they're not generating enough cash. So therein lies the problem. So what they've had to do, and I got to find, just give me a second to find this.
Yeah.
They've raised $13.9 billion so far. Debt.
Wow.
Okay.
Huh.
Equity. Debt. When is it due? 364 days. Okay. Sale leaseback debt. This will be forgiven if they do that right. So they've got to raise $13.9 billion in capital is what they had to do. But when we go over back to their balance sheet, their total debt before this was like $3 billion. All of a sudden, you levered it up. Whoa, where did all the money go? The losses. So they're borrowing to pay the losses. Where's the money going to come from to repay that $2 billion loan?
I believe like Southwest is one of the airlines which is completely screwed because their entire revenue model is based on basically optimizing their resources. So they put more people in the same planes, and then they fly the same plane multiple times. But in the current situation, like people don't want to fly as much. They want more flexibility. They want their tickets back. They want their money back. And the same flight less people will be flying in the same planes, and then the planes won't be flying as much. So they will not be raising, like you said, income will only be 40%, but I feel like it'll be even less because of their revenue model. So if I could just like hazard an estimate, I feel like they'll only get like 20% of their 2019 income. Mm-hmm. I'm just spitballing, but I feel like
you're doing fine.
They're in a pretty bad place, if I should say so myself, because they're not going to raise that kind of money in 364 days. There's no way that's going to happen.
Absolutely. Now, keep that. What happened to that again? Oh, here we go. So now let's keep going with that same thought. Look at the load factor, meaning what were the planes flying at? In April, it was at 8% of capacity. 25, 30, they expect it to be up. But remember, you compact the number of people that it's load factor based on the number of available seat miles or aircraft. Look what else they've done. They've grounded 390 planes that are just sitting in long-term storage or temporary parking, cost associated with that. So you can see that this is a critical issue. But they did some things. They stopped dividends. They suspended share repurchases just for fun and kicks. Let's look at American Airlines. What airline do you fly on, Prabhat, when you come back?
Well, like I usually take Etihad, so it's not anything local mostly.
What is the airline that you take from
Etihad.
India back? What?
Etihad,
Ah, okay.
yeah. But I did fly in American from like Rochester to Chicago. The 10 people flight, that was American.
Now, remember Southwest?
Yeah.
Okay. 8.2 billion. They have the grand total of 280 and 35. They got about 3.8 billion in cash and short term. Whoa. Look at what they have in current maturities of long-term debt. 2.8. Okay. We go back over to, they only got 819. Okay. Accounts payable, crude salary. Look at their air traffic. 4.8. Look, loyalty program liability, 3.1. Frequent flyers, 18. Whoa. Let's look at the cash flow statement. 3.8, about the same as Southwest. What's the relationship? If you're comparing cash flow generation of Southwest to American, who generates more? Not on an absolute basis, but on a relative more basis. It's both the same number. Which one generates proportionately more?
Who has the greater liabilities again?
American.
That's
So
American, yeah.
Yeah, so then Southwest generates more.
Sure. So Southwest is clearly stronger than American. Who's going to go first?
I can't make that guess. American.
American, sure. You would think if we looked at United Continental, we see the same thing? Yeah.
They'll be like American mostly, yeah.
American is probably the worst of the bunch. Okay. United isn't far behind. Southwest, JetBlue are solid. The best one is actually Spirit Air. Spirit Air from a financial perspective?
Seriously?
Yeah. Why did you say that, Chris?
I mean, they're so... Well, actually, no, it does make sense. They always buy really, really cheap airlines that are like... And... Oh, you know, actually, no, Spirit Airlines does make sense. I remember I was watching a video about Spirit Airlines and their financials, and they always make sure that every flight they fly is always a profitable flight. So I could see how Spirit could be a strong one.
Yeah, and let's just take a look at from a financial perspective so you guys can make that tie. Okay, now remember what we saw before. Now it's a smaller airline. 978 in cash, short term. They have $1 billion. Okay, so most of their current assets are all in cash. Drop down here.
So their current ratio is close to like
positive,
right? That's really good.
Okay, so look at their air traffic liability.
Wow.
Look at their cash.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Wait. Wow.
Uh-huh.
Huh. Wow.
So now we've looked at 3 different airlines, and you can now see the capital structure and how they're providing the working capital and how they manage the business is very different. I mean, Spirit will survive. I mean, they're not as, yes, do they need money for operating? Yeah, they do. But look at what they're not going to have to borrow to the extent that if American can borrow. American can't even borrow. Southwest was lucky to be able to borrow. And somebody still put $2.2 billion, $4 billion. If we go back to that presentation, wherever it was, people were willing to put equity. Oops. Somebody's willing to buy 2.2 billion shares. So I think there's the belief that it's going to survive based on a market coming in and providing the equity. So you don't see that happening with American or United. United had a hard time even getting a loan. But what do you think what did we just do? What did we just do?
What do we do for?
I mean, from the process, what did we just look at? What do we spend 10, 15 minutes doing?
We're basically propping up really, how do I say it?
So I guess the companies which are going to go bankrupt anyways, the stimulus package for them was practically useless.
I think, though, go back and look at the process we followed. We got an overview of the industry, right? We then went to the financial statements. We looked at, and we compared 3 different companies. We looked at cash flow. We looked at the relationship of assets to liabilities, and we concluded that some are stronger than others. We were doing financial analysis. We've been analyzing financial statements. Right? Okay. So you now understand what financial statement analysis is all about. Could we spend all day on this? Sure. But did you learn? See how to tie things together and compare and contrast? Yeah. That's what it's all about. Questions, additional thoughts?
This is fun and entertaining. Thank you. I really enjoyed that last segment. Looking at the balance sheets. Thank you. Seriously.
You're welcome.
It's really educational.
That's what we hope you do, is learn.
Yeah.
And you can't do this by just looking at a book. This is real time. It applies to you, how you're going to fly, if you will fly, into your understanding. And there's no clear answer on this stuff. That's what's the good part about that. We can all speculate. And who knows if any of us will be right. But the question is, what price would you fly? Okay. Like, I found a $500 flight to London. Should I go? It's $500 is not a lot of money.
I would definitely wait a little bit. I think England,
even for what if it was 400, Jack?
400 is a pretty good deal to London.
Also, like, a lot of companies are offering this deal. Apparently, if you put in like $600 on ticket, the company is going to add an additional 50% of that. So essentially, you get $900, and you get a span of 24, like 12-ish months to use that ticket whenever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently there are a lot of companies are doing that, because my dad just told me to just buy one in case I have to go back. So if I put in like $1,000, I'll essentially get 1,500 for a ticket, and I can use it whenever within the next 12-ish months.
I gotta look at those things.
Yeah. I haven't really read about it much, but I've heard that's what's happening.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at that. That might be, if I got a year, I think we'll be all right within a year to go back on a plane.
Hopefully.
Okay. The next one of these is at 9:45. And this one, the next one is actually an interesting one, is about companies giving guidance. I think, yeah, they're doing the guidance one. A lot of companies will issue guidance when they announce their earnings. Like, we think we're going to come out in this range or that range. And a lot of people have discontinued that. And you'll see a real good discussion about what Johnson & Johnson did. Because they did it a little differently. And it did really very effective, I think. So with that, if you see you guys, if you want to come back, I think you now know what it's like. And remember, you got to do 3 of them. So spending the morning doing this, you'll get them all done and you'll have it all done. Okay. See you in a bit.